All right, welcome in everyone. UGA football live with JC Shelton. Instant reactions. Let's talk about it. All right. Georgia goes into Austin. Nobody thought the Bulldogs had a chance, folks. You heard Kirby Smart say it right on the broadcast after the game. The entire ESPN network didn't think Texas was going to lose that game, right? Clean sweep on College game day. Everybody else who wasn't on game day throughout the week also had Texas. But Georgia does it. It did the thing, man. And in very, very weird fashion, and we'll get into that, of course. But Georgia does the thing. The game that was circled on the schedule, beyond Alabama, beyond Ole Miss, beyond Tennessee, the game that Georgia had a chance to come in and prove, if you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. Right? Georgia came in that stadium in a hostile environment and put a whooping on Texas, the number one team in the country. Georgia fans should feel absolutely ecstatic, right? But let's get into what I have to start this off with, really, which is the absolute crapshoot of this game was by the officials. And here's the underlying thing. What should have been a classic game, which that's how it played out in the first half. Think about this game, guys. You have Georgia and Texas, the environment, Texas coming over from the Big 12, the number one team in the country. They had a great season. Georgia, right? One lone loss to Alabama. They're fighting to stay in this SEC race, right? To get a good spot in the college football playoff. And instead, in the second half, the referees took over the game and made it an almost impossible game for a rewatch. Like, if you're sitting down, let's think a couple years in advance, maybe after this season, let's say Georgia goes off and wins the national championship. This game against Texas was a big part of that, right? And you're sitting around on a Thursday afternoon, maybe in the spring, you're off of work, right? Maybe the kids are getting watched by somebody, and you're like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch that Georgia-Texas game. I don't know if you can and enjoy it. I don't know, because that second half was absolutely ridiculous, guys. I mean, targeting rule is the most egregious rule in sports. We know this. We don't really talk about it enough, really, until it happens. And it happens in these big-time games. Once they call it one time, and then they feel they need to call it again. That's the position they were in, right, with the targeting. Georgia's down 2 safeties, still gets off the field twice, down 2 safeties. And then, obviously, the one that will be talked about for months. And Greg Sankey should be, if he wasn't at that game, he might have been, he probably was. He needs to fly to wherever the officiating office is to have a conversation, a sit down, bring the lawyers, because that is not what you want your sport to be. Absolutely not, guys. And I am not the one. And if you listen to this show, I'm not the one for conspiracy theories about refs. Oh man, they're in somebody's pocket. I'm not that guy. I give professionals the benefit of the doubt. But the crapshoot that happened with that call that cannot be reversed, that was reversed after referees had 10 minutes to look at the video board to see the crowd's reaction and basically overrule the side judge who was by the play. And listen, you can call that pass interference. You cannot call that pass interference. I tweeted, I said, I don't know. I said, I don't necessarily agree with that call, but you called it. You called it. Got to go with it, man. You can't revert. There's a reason that play is non-reviewable. That counts when you're looking at the video board, folks. And think about the precedent that was just set. Think about the precedent that was just set in college football. You got college football fans who watched that game. It's probably pulled in an incredible amount of viewers for ESPN. You've got college football fans from across the country who watched that game and saw that you can throw stuff on the field like a little kid, paging Tennessee, and get a call reversed, a massive call. Take away that call, folks. Georgia has the ball in midfield. No, Texas has it within their own 10, and they score easy points. You just gave them points. You talk about the call. You called it. You just called it, man. That's just how it goes. If it was the other way around, I'd say the same thing. But here we are having to have this conversation, which I absolutely hate for the sport. and it ruined the second half of the game for me as a football fan, not as a Georgia grad or covering the team, doing this with you guys, which I fully appreciate you joining me right now. Late one, right? It hurts me as a football fan, as a person who does this for a living and watches these games for a living. And now we have a showing like that, right? And then after that, it just felt to me like the refs were trying to give Texas as many opportunities as possible to stay in that game. Even the spot, right? The Trevor Etienne spot, which Georgia would have an opportunity to run out the clock with a first down. Tremendous run by Trevor Etienne. Spins out of a tackle, breaks another. The defender is under him as he goes out of bounds. He obviously has the ball past the marker. The broadcast booth said it. I said it when it was first called not a first down. It's like, that's a clear first down. And no, like you spend the time to review it, right? And then you give Texas another chance. Now, Georgia, ball don't lie, folks. Ball does not lie. Georgia gets off the field. Could have been a different game if that didn't happen. You think about the ETN touchdown. Did Georgia score 3 touchdowns on one drive? That's what it looked like. You could argue Carson Beck was in there on that sneak. ETN, he was, again, the knees were not down. You knew where the ball was in his arm, and you know where the arm ended up. That's a touchdown. And we just, everybody in that building knew it was a touchdown. Right? And it pains me to have to talk about it, but we have to. And something has to be done, because I know Kirby Smart, how he responded on that ESPN broadcast, saying basically the officials were egregious. They were trying to rob us, is what he actually said, which I totally agree. That's what it seemed like. Something has to be done. I know Kirby Smart and that staff in Georgia are gonna be talking to the SEC office about that, and Texas might too. Texas has some calls that they don't like either. But you have to have some type of a fine, first off, for that fan situation. Absolutely. You can't let that happen. I don't know what goes through these guys' minds in these big games. I don't know. You have to have some consistency, right? These two teams, this is the top of college football, and your performance is like that. There has to be some repercussions somewhere, because it's just going to get worse, or it's always going to be this bad, right? So that just irked me, and I know it irks you guys, and I see you in the comments here. Texas trashed their field and then got rewarded for it by Zach Foley right there on X. Let's see. Vegas made a call at halftime or something. Texas fans suck. Childish to throw stuff on the field and give refs time and influence them to change the call. Guys, these are absolutely right. I completely agree. Here's one from Montrell Wilson on Facebook. I get the controversial call, but that I was convinced Beck and all the receivers were playing for Texas as well. Guys, the drops are incredible. And don't get me wrong, there are so many positives that come out of this game, and we're going to talk about it. But the drops are incredible because, and I tweeted this, offensively and defensively combined, because Georgia dropped, 4 interceptions? And then on offense, you had 5, 6 drops, I want to say. What is that? Because, me and Arthur Lynch, my co-host, who's not here right now, obviously. We talk about the drops because former tight end. I'm like, hey, what is this? Is this a yips thing? He thinks it's a yips thing. I think it's all mental. So I don't know how you get past that. It's definitely a fixable issue. But it's going to come to a point where Georgia could lose games because of this, right? I mean, this was a 15-point game with some chances for Texas to make it a 1-score game there. The drops are an absolute issue. I don't know what goes, because if Carson Beck, he had a very tough day, right? 3 interceptions, no touchdowns, was rattled at times, was rushing throws, was not setting his feet in the pocket, was feeling some pressure that wasn't there. And how many more yards would he have had, and how different would this game have been if those catches were made? Because he came into this game with 197 yards missed by drops this season, which is second in the FBS. You can add another 100 yards to that today, it feels like. Those are things that Georgia can work on, right? And that's an area you need to get better at, absolutely. But it keeps on happening, right? It's a consistent theme, right? Consistent theme. Let's talk about this defense, guys, because this was 2021 level defense. And I have never used that before. I've never said that before because this precedent that Georgia team and that defense set with all those NFL guys was amazing. And it's the best in my lifetime I've ever seen for a defense. And that's what I was reminded of today. 7 sacks. Georgia entered the game with 7 sacks, 8 QB hurries, 10 tackles for loss. Texas averaged 1.1 yards per rush. Defense won this game 100%, bunch of studs. Matt Loon, I'm completely with you. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your last name right, but I am with you, Matt. This is from Beth. Saw it on Facebook. Thank God for the defense. Absolutely, guys. This defense is absolutely incredible. If you'd have told me, right, let's visit this first half again. Carson Beck's going to throw 2 interceptions. You're going to score 0 points, and you're going to have a lead. Would have laughed at you. Yeah, absolutely would have laughed at you. The defense just was in bad situation after bad situation, but the tackling was on point. The pass defense, I know there's a couple busted coverages there, right? And that happens. That's going to happen. But overall, I mean, that defense was absolutely incredible. You catch a few more picks, and it could have been like a historic performance by the Georgia defense. But still, 4 turnovers. Ewers, I don't care if it was Quinn Ewers. I don't care if it was Arch Manning. Those guys were not comfortable whatsoever. And what is that? How did this happen? Line of scrimmage, baby. There was a couple of coverage sacks tonight, but that is line of scrimmage dominance. And why did we see that? Because that Texas offensive line's got a couple studs on it. They're going to play in the NFL probably for a long time, right? So they have the talent. They've played well. They've played a lot of games together, maybe the most experienced group in college football as far as how many starts they've had together and consecutively. And Georgia showed up and manhandled them up front, really for 4 quarters, which is very, very impressive to do, guys, because how many times have we seen guys get gassed in the 4th, right? It's just the nature of football, especially in the SEC. Hit, body blow after body blow, whistle after whistle. It gets to these big guys. Georgia's conditioned, and they're healthier, right? Because the first part of the season, Georgia's banged up. Absolutely banged up. You got Warren Brinson down, Michael Williams down, Jordan Hall down, other nagging little injuries. And Georgia's the healthiest been on the defensive line yet this year. And they put that performance on tape. And I think if you're Georgia and you're Kirby Smart, you're Glenn Schumann, Travaris Robinson, you see that happen, and you're feeling really good about what you can do the rest of the year. Because that is an absolute dominant performance. And I'm going to talk offensive line too. That offensive line was moving folks, guys. That's a really good front for Texas. Texas didn't play their best, but Georgia manhandled them up front. And that's where we all talk about it. You hear it. It's repetitive, but you win the line of scrimmage. You win SEC football games most of the time. And, considering Beck's 3 picks, that tells you right there how good Georgia was up front. That's how they were able to come back and come back from those interceptions, I say. The second half, you got nervous there for a minute, right? And you had a missed kick, which comes out reportedly that was actually just a missed kick and not a purpose onside or squib or whatever you want to call it. Weird situation, right? Sets Texas up. Penalties allow Texas really in great striking position. Touchdown, boom, 8 points just like that, right? And then the calls started to come, and that's what we've already gotten to. So it was weird from that standpoint. Texas had so many more opportunities than Georgia in that second half to make it a game and get life. And they did. The stadium came alive. And Georgia battled so much adversity there. They battled the adversity of Texas getting momentum. They battled the adversity of Beck getting picked off. They battled the adversity of the field storming of bottles and beer cans. The egregious calls, the targeting calls, missing one of my favorite players that's played in a Georgia uniform, Dan Jackson. He goes out. Then you get Jonelle Aguero goes out. It's like all that adversity and Georgia still won. That's very, very impressive, guys. I don't care what team who we're even talking about right now. It doesn't have to be Georgia. Team does that. That's very, very impressive, and I absolutely love watching football like that. And if the refs could just take a hike, that would have been much Much better second half to watch. Um, yeah, penalties 7 for 78. Texas had 8 for 40. Obviously, the penalties against Texas weren't that impactful, as impactful, I should say. Special teams was really good for Georgia. Peyton Wittering, absolutely automatic, guys. He's an absolute weapon. Do not forget it. Brett Thorson, absolute weapon. The bombs this kid from Australia was kicking. 4 for 54, 2 inside the 20. Anthony Evans getting some space there on kick returns. And Trevor Etienne had a career game, I think. 87 yards, 19 carries, average 4.6, 3 touchdowns for him, career high. The amount of yards that he gets, even the patience he showed, right? That was impressive to me today. There was a time he's letting his blocks develop, and that offensive line, because they were winning, and because you had a guy like Xavier Truss who's playing inside, and they put Monroe Freeling, the sophomore, not a lot of snaps under his belt, over on the right side. That combination looked really good early, and then they put Micah Morrison at that right guard spot too to get a fresh body in there and push him in the run game. Let's talk Benjamin Harris here on Facebook. This is a good one. Is Beck overhyped? He's playing like it. He's absolutely playing. I'm a Beck stan. I'm impressed with the kid's poise. Absolutely. I think he has a lot of arm talent, and we witnessed that. His deep balls, you heard me talk about it earlier this week. His deep balls have been so good. I mean, let's think for a second here. Those drops that happen don't happen. What do we think of Beck's game at that point? Do we forget about the PI that should have not been called, whatever? But he was just so uncomfortable and seeing pressure that wasn't there. And then I think that messed with his psyche. He was rattled at one point. I mean, those hits keep coming as far as mistake, drop. You have a good play here. You're like, okay, I'm finally in rhythm. And then interception, miscommunication. Like on that PI that wasn't a PI, that was a miscommunication. And that's why at first I was like, even if that's PI, not PI, whatever, that's on Beck. And was that Arian Smith? Yeah, it was Arian Smith. Because Arian, he pulls inside. Beck throws it back shoulder. So that wasn't going to be complete anyway. That was going to be bad. It goes obviously in the arms of the defender. But Beck, I don't know what to put the finger on, guys. I really don't. And I'm still waiting for someone to give me something that makes sense on that and why Beck's playing this way. It could be related to the receiver room and the drops that happen and miscommunications here and there, right? I think Georgia's struggling there. They played really good at times. They made plays like Carson Beck. He made the plays, right? Remember, it was Georgia was backed up. Texas had all the momentum. Georgia's backed up in their own side of the field, 3rd and 10 or longer, and he hits that deep shot right there to get a first down. Georgia go on and score, which really turned the tides of the game. It kind of killed that comeback run for Texas. Now, the refs gave him more opportunities, but that was absolutely huge. That was probably the most impactful series of events there. And then that reverse pass from Bobo, absolutely loved it. I love the game calls from Bobo for the most part. Now, the last play, the 4th and 1, where Etienne should have already had a first down in the first place, you can talk about should you punt there, should you go. The way Georgia was playing up front, I don't hate the call. Full game. And this is funny, guys. I post a picture at halftime on UGA Football Live Instagram. It was just of Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning sitting on the side looking like sad puppies. And one of the first comments was, what is Bobo doing? Guys, I mean, did you see the drops? Right? Did you see Beck miscommunications? Beck, inaccurate. Plays were open, guys, from the jump. Receivers are running open. Offensive line's getting pushed. They're running lanes there. Etienne's playing well. You can't do that as an offensive coordinator. You're calling the game how you see it. You're calling a good game. They got to make the plays, folks. And it's just so easy to bag on the coordinators. But when you don't execute on the field, that's what happens. What was the deal with the headsets going down? Absolutely don't know. Well, that might be the only good decision the refs actually made that game, which was when Kirby Smart and Georgia complained about the headsets being off. They did make Texas take theirs off for a second, talk to the guy who was ever running the comms there. They got it back up. But yeah, I was kind of laughing at that early in the game because I was like, we have already our first conspiracy of the game. Little did I know that it would take an entirely worse turn later in the game. Cameron L here on X. Do you think Delp should have been targeted more tonight? Honestly, man, I think they're using him so much as a blocker because they don't like what they see from Yurosek on a consistent basis there. And Lucky is a smaller guy. Lucky is your threat passing wise. I think they're really targeting Lucky more as a receiver. I think he's a better receiver right now in his career. Delp has some good time backing up for Bowers and being that kind of Swiss Army knife as far as in the run game and the pass game. But then you have a guy like Bowers and McConkey to guard too, so you get more opportunities if you're Delp. He's the number one guy this year, and they're doing a good job on him and defending at least pass wise. So I love Lucky, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I was like, Lawson Lucky is probably going to be the leading tight end. I think he is by a lot now. By the end of the season, he looks like a receiver with the ball in his hands. Not as drop heavy as the rest of Georgia's receiving options. Let's look back here to the list. Trying to get to all as much as I can here, guys. This defense could be close to being great from 10 Johns on Facebook. They absolutely have the talent to do it. And I think we saw them put a full game together today, which was really, really good for Georgia looking forward. Because here at UGA Football Live, we are a forward-thinking show. All right? And that's what we'll get to now. That's a perfect segue. Let's get in. What does this mean for Georgia? Oh, before that, hold on. Jalen Walker made millions of dollars tonight, folks, because there was I think earlier in the game, this was pregame, and I read a tweet from an NFL draft analyst for ESPN, Jordan Reed, I think. Shout out Jordan. Named how many NFL teams had personnel there. It was like 15, and I bet you there was more that they just don't know because they're there to watch all that talent for both sides, right? Texas got a bunch of guys who are going to go to the draft, especially on the offensive line. You got Isaiah Bond. Ewers, obviously, they want to get an early look at Manning. Guys in the secondary are going to go. And then Georgia, obviously, offensive line, just everywhere. You got guys going to go. So they come in there probably to really key in on the quarterbacks. Carson Beck, Ewers, they're going to be in contention there at the top of the draft for quarterbacks. And they probably came away thinking Jalen Walker might be the number one defensive player taken. That's if Travis Hunter don't go as a cornerback. He's taking him as a receiver. But his impact was incredible. And think about, his performance against Alabama, performance against Kentucky. When Georgia needs him in big moments, he is that on defense, that gotta-have-it guy. On offense, you're going to make a play. You're going to get a first down. You're going to catch a 50-50 ball. Georgia has that player, but on defense and playing inside and outside linebacker. He's a Swiss Army knife. Dude, NFL teams are just drooling. He is a Micah Parsons. Power, speed. He was doing this against one of the top left tackles in the country in Banks. And it was just so impressive. Didn't he have – he had like 7 tackles at half. He had 3 sacks. No player has done that in the first half before or in a half of football, I read. And that shows you – and he's a very, very smart kid. Kirby Smart loves him. He's the coach's son. Very, very talented, humble kid. Says the right things, carries himself the right way. And he stays healthy. And he's an absolute weapon for this Georgia defense. And I think we're just finally starting to see Georgia get comfortable with his skill set because he could do so many different things that we're seeing him take off. So he's going to be an absolute problem for guys to deal with moving forward in these SEC offenses. So let's jump into this rest of the season. What does it mean, right? So this is a monumental win beyond just you beat the number one team in the country, guys. This is a huge win in the SEC race, right? Because you already had Georgia with a loss. Alabama goes down again today to Tennessee, and that was a very difficult game to watch if you didn't. The quarterbacks were just running for their lives all day. Jalen Monroe, probably one of the worst games I've seen him play. Nico he made a really good throw there to go up, I will say that, at the end of that game. So that was a gutsy move by him. I think he played better at the end of that game. Tennessee has been so one-dimensional on offense, surprisingly, right? Nico had 5 touchdowns for the first 2 games. He's thrown 1 since. And then today, what he had 2 maybe or 1. So he hasn't been great. The offense is looking one-dimensional. You don't want to be one-dimensional against Georgia. I can tell you that, especially in Athens. Right. So SEC race, Alabama has another loss. LSU won today, so they're still undefeated. A&M won today, beat Mississippi State by a little. Mississippi State, they're going to be a problem. Van Buren, Jeff Lebby. We saw it last week. They're going to give guys problems in the future. Yes, Alabama 2 losses now. A&M's undefeated in the SEC. LSU's undefeated in the SEC. You got Ole Miss coming up, right? You got Tennessee at the end of the year. That Tennessee game might be big, obviously, for this if they're able to get through the rest of their slate unscathed before we take them on in November. But guys, for me, it's looking like this Ole Miss game on the road in Oxford after playing Florida, because you got to bye this next week, right? Typical bye before Florida. You're playing a Florida team who's played much better recently. DJ Lagaway, he can do stuff that we haven't seen from Florida quarterbacks in a long, long time. He's one of those young guys that can move, good pocket presence, absolute rocket of an arm. I think he's made them better. That'll be an interesting game when we get into the preview for that. But then you got Ole Miss on the road, and you might be number one in the country at that point. You don't know what the hype's going to be exactly around this, right? Because that's a team with 2 losses, a team really fighting to ruin somebody else's season. I don't know if they get in the playoff. They're out of the SEC race right now, and they would need a lot of help to get back in it. But how that's set up on the road, I'm much more hesitant to say, Georgia just takes care of Ole Miss easily, right? Because, we haven't had any easy games. I'll take that back. Of course, it's not going to be easy, but takes care of them without, last-second drama. Because Tennessee and Athens, we all know how that usually works out, don't we? I don't think Tennessee has the team right now to go into a venue like that and take down Georgia. Especially with how one-dimensional they are on offense. And then if this Georgia defense plays like that, it's going to be a long, 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 long day for Nico. Because that Tennessee offensive line is not as good as Texas. They haven't shown it, at least. So for me, this Ole Miss game is going to be very, very pivotal for Georgia. It's kind of a sandwich game, coming off a heated rivalry right before Tennessee game when they already have one loss. So that's what you're looking forward to, right? Because that's who could probably play spoil there in the SEC race. But all that to say, you just passed a major, major hurdle if you're Georgia and going down there to Austin and taking care of Matthew McConaughey's Fighting Longhorns. Okay? And that's absolutely awesome to think about. I'm glad we're having a good talk here, guys, because it's been a little down and gloom, right? A little gloomy last week with how the end of that game turned out. Morris Phillips, go Dogs on Facebook. Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. But yeah, so Georgia, it kind of sets up a good thing for a bye week here. Get healthy, work on maybe hit the jugs machine, the entire team, defense and two. That would be good. That would be good. I'm sure they already do that. Maybe get one in your house. If you can catch balls in your sleep, please, Arian Smith, Dylan Bell, and those guys, please do that. I don't know how you would do it, but I believe in you. Have all the resources and money to make that a success, right? Clean up those things. Look ahead, and Georgia's coaching staff during bye weeks, they're going to look ahead to different opponents. They're going to look at Tennessee. They're going to look at Ole Miss, start early preparations for them, but also get into Florida the week after that bye. All right, headed in to a big game in Jacksonville, and that's a sneaky Florida team. They're doing it's hard to put your finger on them. Are they going to play great this game, or are they going to fold like the typical Florida we've seen the last several years? But they are playing better, I think, and Lagway gives them a chance here to do something to make it close, to make it competitive when it shouldn't be. Because overall, they don't have the talent to stack up with Georgia or the coaching staff. Schematically, they don't. But a guy like Lagaway and quarterbacks, man, they can make these things a game, especially with a talent like his. He's going to be good in this league. But I think that wraps it up, guys. Enjoy your night. Thanks so much for joining a late show here. Sitting here at 19 minutes after midnight. We got almost 2,000 of you joining in. So really appreciate all the support this year. We'll be back next week. Might be a bye week, but it ain't for us. Okay, we're going to be back. We're going to be talking college football. We'll talk about the other games around the country as well next week. But for now, we're going to get out of here, and I'm going to get some sleep, guys. So enjoy your night. We appreciate it always. UGA Football Live. Thank you.